I always felt like I was in a space where being myself was wrong.
If you're around people who don't know who they are, you'll kind of lose your identity into who they think you are, who you feel like you can be, and sometimes those lines will get blurred.
So a lot of times I would be like, why am I like cool with all these people who are really, it's just not equally yoked.
All right. I'm excited. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming to the first episode of BOP Talk for this year. I'm going to start by going around and having you guys introduce yourselves and just what you do, and then we'll introduce the topic for this month. Okay? I'll start with you, Chandler.
So my name is Tamara Martin. I work as a community outreach coordinator, and I just added on the grant writer to my title at a women's clinic that provides prenatal and postpartum care services.
Beautiful.
My name is Carissa Anderson, and I am the customer marketing manager for a restaurant tech company called Toast, where I manage the customer advisory board.
Oh, cool. Sorry. My name's Shooks. Currently a data analyst at American Airlines. Um, that's about it.
All right, we love it.
Hi guys, my name is Bisola. I do a lot of things, but I'm a mental health professional. So I work for a mental health agency, um, doing like skills training, sometimes a little bit of case management, but I'm actually training to be a psychotherapist. So I'm a student as well, and I'm in my practicum, so I see clients like all day long for therapy. And then I also work at two private practices seeing clients. So I kind of do everything mental health.
Yeah.
I am Bree. By trade, professionally, I'm a marketing and business development specialist for a government agency, and also I'm a podcaster.
Period. I love it. I love it. Okay. So, like I was telling you guys, this year I have figured out that I think I want the theme for our conversations to center around just kind of evolving self. And so, with that being said, I'm trying to start with us like peeling back the layers of self and starting with the core. And so, I think one very important thing for us to identify just as we're trying to figure out ourselves is like who we are and our identity. And so, that is the theme for today. And I'll just get started. We'll do question number one. All right. All right. All right. So, and anyone can jump at the question. Go do what you do. All right. So, who are you at your core? How would you describe yourself to others, capturing the essence of who you are?
I'll put the icing on it first.
Okay.
A little bit about me. Me going first would definitely be out of the norm because I'm not a big like initiator of conversation. I think that really speaks to who I am as a person. I'm more of a listener responder. And for a long time, I really had a problem with that about myself. But I'm coming to a space as I get older, realizing that that is my superpower. So I think at my core, who I am and how I would describe myself to other people is I'm a thinker. There's always something going on in the background there, whether I like it or not. And I've had to kind of realize that you can't change that about yourself. When I say you, I'm talking to myself. I can't change that about myself. And it's not something that I should want to change because it makes me exactly who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of situations where even I might feel that there needs to be a response, I have to be able to really sit with myself in being the thinker, the responder, not necessarily the spark, but someone who really likes to engage once the spark has already been made, if that makes sense. So that's how I would describe myself.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Anybody else?
I would describe myself at my core, I'm a problem solver. I am that person, you come to me and I'm already thinking of like a million solutions. And I'm always optimistic and looking for the good in a situation, the good in people. And it's something that I've learned I had to turn on and off sometimes, because sometimes you have to be a listener. You have to take a step back, and just listen, as opposed to immediately go into problem solving mode. And I'm someone now, knowing that I'm a problem solver, I'm learning how to kind of sit in those uncomfortable feelings, and being okay with the unknown, and that not everything may have an immediate solution. And it's okay to just sit with your feelings and just feel.
Period. Okay. Anybody else? I think so. When I was thinking about this question, I had a very descriptive. I have to like kind of story tell it. And y'all will be dang. There's only like 2 people that have heard me like actually describe this version, like how I see myself. So, all right, here we go. So I really see myself as this okay, like this warrior princess that is standing atop like this mountain, or this like step off, and like just I'm trying to create the image. So pan from her feet up to her head, and she's just kind of standing like with this sword at the side, and it's like kind of, I don't know, anchored in the ground. And as you're panning up, it's like you see that she's dressed in white, but she's like, her clothes are ripped. She's kind of been bruised, kind of has some scars, kind of has all the, just like she's been through war. And then you go up to her face, and there's just like this grace, and there's a there's a warmth to her. Um, there's a but also like she strikes fear in you, like kind of like a, like don't play with me. But there's a warmth to her, like it's like she's mother, like kind of just a very strong presence. And so like funny enough, I was very hesitant to try and describe myself that way, even though that's really how I see myself. So it's um, the essence of who I am really is a very strong individual, someone that's wears her scars, wears her bruises, all the things, you see them. Um, and but she also carries herself with a lot of grace, and there is a like a strong power, like a silent power with her. And so like um, it's funny that this is the first time that I can actually say that, but that's how I see that version of, that's how I see myself, or at least the essence of myself. Um, yeah, I don't know, been through a lot, but it's still very poised, very graceful, very, warm, inviting. So
That was a beautiful description.
Yeah.
Everything you said, I could just visualize it,
Yeah.
and I could feel it. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't rehearse that. And like you just said it for the first time.
Yeah, that's yikes. I'm actually even shaking.
It
That's
sounded
crazy. Yes. So that's me. Anybody else?
Yeah, I love that you say that, and it's crazy. I feel like the way I see myself is changing as I grow. Like I thought I was this one way, I think a lot of us, like, we have stories. I've always saw myself as somebody who's very like resilient. I'm a problem solver. I'm a connector. But I don't define myself by my trauma anymore. And I think that I did that for so long that it was so hard for me to see, like, who are you? So now I'm coming into this new identity. I'm a creative. I'm a connector. I'm a problem solver. I'm learning to take my cape off because I can't be the hero for everybody. But um, I'm complex. I'm a lot of things.
Yeah. Beautiful. Anybody else? All right. You want to go?
I mean, sure. So I was actually going to say I really love the vulnerability here, because I'm hearing everyone mention just like a lot of things that are hard to talk about. So yay, we're doing a great job. I think that's the therapist in me like complimenting. But I would describe myself as light. And I think I've always understood that about me, but it's hard to like, it's like sometimes you understand something, but verbalizing it is different. And I think also like if you describe yourself as like light, or even like a warrior, people might get like arrogant.
Right.
People get like, can take a lot of things from that. But I remember like as a child, my parents would describe me as having like so much energy, and like you would play forcefully, and like you laughed very loudly, and you're like very talkative. And I think for a long time I was like ashamed of that, or like criticized for that. But now, having been through a lot as well, I think I have this like will to live, and just like light can like flicker, but before the fire like really burns out, it'll like fight.
Yeah.
So I think I would describe myself as like light, like even in the darkness, that little light that's kind of just like pushing and like illuminating. So think I would describe myself as white.
Period. I love that.
So I describe myself as I think an explorer.
I love it.
I've been very fascinated with knowledge and seeking it, but more importantly, truth, because I think that throughout life for me, throughout life I've been told lies, but I don't think it was always intentional. I think it was just a lack of knowledge on a lot of different fronts. And so I've been someone that's wanted to gravitate towards the truth. And I think that's something I haven't really tapped into as often, because it's really hard to do that. You have to be willing to stand against whatever most people around you could be doing, and kind of traverse the unknown in that sense. And so I've always wanted to do that. And I see the truth as like light. So I thought that was like really, when you said light, I was just like, that's fire. I've just I've tried to reach that and tried to walk towards that. So I'd say I like to explore knowledge, and that's, I think, the deepest kind of description I have for myself at the moment.
Okay, so. Beautiful, beautiful. I love this. I love this. Okay. To add on to that, so reflecting on your journey, how did you come to understand and define who you are as an individual? So we've figured out kind of who we are. How did we get there?
I would say acceptance. I think that sometimes we let our environment or things define who we are. And so it's hard for us to accept, like, who are you at your core, even if you're not who you want to be or who you should be. Who are you right now?
Right.
I think that's how I was able to just kind of, this is who I am, like, I'm a sum of everything that I've been through. So stop running from it and just accept it.
Yeah.
And I would say for me, my mid to like where I am now, my late 20s, has really allowed me to come into myself 100%. And I think that came with the journey of accepting my past. For so long, I was identifying as the past version of myself, maybe the little girl who was insecure, unsure of herself. And I kind of took that on as identity. And I thought that that's just who I was. And I accepted that I was this person that couldn't really evolve. But it really hit me, those moments where you're like, wow, like there's so much more to life. I can evolve at any moment. I can change my identity and show up as that person, has really helped me navigate like this new chapter of my late 20s and love myself and be true to myself 100%. So I would say within like the past few years, I've really come to own who I am and love myself unapologetically on this journey.
Beautiful. I was about to say too, now I'm thinking about it, I was like, how did I come up with that image of myself? And I think the best answer for that is acceptance. And also kind of looking back on the past and being like, man, look at how far you've come. But also it's like, there's a thing that I've done that's not that it surprised me, but it's like when you go through things, and I totally agree with should not identify with your trauma, because that's not necessarily who you are. It's just the thing that has happened to you. And it's just like being knocked down, get back up, being knocked down, get back up. The past 10 years of my life has been that in constant series. And so there's a couple of times where I've been like, man, you just don't die, do you? Like, you just keep on getting back up. And so like, that's, I think, what has helped me form that version of myself. If anything else fails, one thing I do know is like, I'm going to keep on like getting up. I'm going to keep on trying to fight. I'm going to keep on, like, I don't give up. So, yeah, that's mine. And anybody else?
I'd say, cool. I'd say mine was through trial and error. I don't think I always had a plan to figure out who I was, up until recently. And it was after doing a lot of introspection on my end and kind of seeing where I'm here now in my life. How did I get here? And it's a pretty interesting question, because again, I didn't know. I realized that I had been kind of trying to run in a certain direction, and without a plan or any kind of guidance, and hoping I would get there, but then not really like aligning my actions with that hope. And so I'd kind of, reach for the stars, land on the moon, but land on a moon that I didn't want to land on. And so that's kind of how I figured out that I like to do that, but let's have some sense while we do it. So
okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I like what you said about introspection. To my previous point, I think I've always been very, very introspective. And surprisingly for me, finding and defining who I really am did not come from my own inner thoughts. Because I like to pride myself on always, like, I know what's going on. I have control, I can think this through by myself. I was really able to accept and define myself through finding similarities or things that I experience in a certain way through my dad, actually. Goodness. That was going to happen so quick. But,
take your time, babe.
So for me growing up, I always felt like I was in a space where being myself was wrong. It wasn't that I wasn't liked or wasn't loved or wasn't accepted. It felt wrong to be me. And being older and seeing that the things that were normal for me are a part of who I was born to be really spoke to me a lot as an adult. So that really helped me just be okay. Me and my dad, we're the same. So it's not outlandish for me to be this way. It's not wrong. It's not weird. That's who I am. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else for me?
Do I have something to chime on? I think actually for me, which is so interesting, because I describe myself as light, I found myself in a series of like relationships, and it could be like friendships or dating with people who were just not light. But maybe they were like attracted to light. So a lot of times I would be like, why am I like cool with all these people who are really, it's just not equally yoked. It's not, I find myself giving a lot and not really receiving as much. And so I one time I was described as Enid. Y'all know Wednesday? Right. I was described as Enid, and someone that I was very close to was described as Wednesday. And we know in this show, we know how Wednesday is, but I, like, in my reflection, I was like, this doesn't make sense because this is not like a movie. Right. And so I was able to see that, okay, I'm a light. There's something about me that in which others who aren't lights or who are struggling are drawn to, but I'm letting that consume me, and it's in some ways dimming my light. So I think I had to affirm myself in knowing that this light kind of has to be protected, right? So I think it was actually through relationships with others and kind of navigating that I was able to understand myself. And my framework, even as a therapist, is relational. So I feel like you can't even fully understand yourself if you're not considering the types of relationships you're in. So that's how I got there, actually, is just in terms of how I relate to others, not my family, but just other people, kind of objectively looking at that.
Okay, I like it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to our next question. All right, to what extent is who you are today a result of your own intentional design? And I'll ask the other question afterwards because that one's a pretty loaded one.
I'd say for me, so I introduced myself as Trooks, but most people know me as Chris, and it's not a thing of like, oh, I'm how do I say, I'm blanking. It's not that I'm ashamed of Chris or anything. It's like, so I've had this thing of I've wanted to kind of will myself to be aligned more with truth. And for me to do that, I had to create this like kind of archetype of a man, and I decided to name him Chooks, and that's my middle name. I thought that it was an interesting way for me to like kind of create my own path in that way. Just because again, like I was always doing trial and error, kind of like running in different directions and not knowing what I was doing. But this was kind of my disciplined effort um, to I guess strive towards truth.
Yeah.
And so that I think is what I'm trying to embody now. And I think it's really not a thing of like me reaching towards anything. It's kind of as I go deeper into myself, I sorry, uncover that.
Yeah.
And so that's been kind of like this journey that I thought was going to be upwards has always gone inward. And as I go inward, I kind of grow into this Chooks archetype. So
I like that. I was about to say, when I was reading this question, I was just like, dang, I actually, I feel like I just started that process, not even like a year, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm 27 years old, and 25 years of that was, I don't even know who that human being, I don't even know who she was, but she was trauma. That's what I could say. So like when we're speaking of that, trying to distance yourself from the trauma, it's like for a good amount of my life, I lived my identity in this place of just pain and like, oh, this is what has happened to me. Like, this is all that I am, like, just like from that space. And it wasn't until like actively, like 2 years ago is when I started saying like, okay, who are you? Like, what are we doing? Like, you got to be more than this. Like, this can't be this can't be how you define yourself. And then it's like intentionally, like actually being intentional about it. I would say like probably a year ago, which was just me like asking the hard questions, like, who are you? What do you like to do? And like, that's, so at that 2 year mark, like I asked myself a very simple question, is like, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? And I couldn't answer them. And that's actually what scared me, because I was like, everyone seems to have like hobbies or like things that they can identify, or the things that they do for themselves. And I really couldn't. Like, I was actually like very pressed because I couldn't understand. I didn't know who I was. And so then that's what started that journey of like, okay, well, let's like very basic, like, what do you like? And it's like, well, I like the breeze. I like going outside. I like being around friends. I like games. And it felt very, like, I felt very dumb going through that process, but it's like, that's the first time I actually like tried to discover myself. And now when we're talking about being intentional, it's like, now I'm like putting myself in those spaces. It's like, okay, well, I thought about it, and I thought about it for a good year. And I'm like, okay, look, go put yourself in there. Like, go do the thing. And so, if we're putting it in percentages, I think right now, I would say it's like 60-40, like 60%, 40% is like me actually being very intentional, but it's growing. It's just like, I feel like I had a late start. So, but I think I'm finally finding my momentum of like, okay, this is who you are. This is what you like to do. This is an example of that. Like you were saying, like how you found like you're creative, or like, that's a thing. Like, and it's scary to say, because like for the rest of your life, or the majority of your life, you tell yourself things, and you allow people to tell you things and like define who you are. And so like for me to sit there and say like, oh, you're creative, or you like to do this, or you like, it's scary to say, because I'm fighting somebody else's words along with my own. And so this is the first time that I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Like, let me figure out who I am. And so, yes, that's that.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say it's a lot of things.
Go ahead.
So one thing, like I'm 31, but there's something about that 27, 28, 29 where something switches. Like, I thought that I was going crazy. I'm like, what is it? So you come into yourself and you're like, okay, you feel like, oh, I'm an adult. I should have these things. I should know these things. But in all honesty, you don't. Because when you turn 30, it's going to happen again. Okay, trust me. So, like, just enjoy the ride, Like, I thought that I was going to be defined. So I guess a little backstory. I was a radio personality in college, and I thought that that's what I was going to pursue. But you said something that stuck to me. You talked about being unequally yoked, and like if you're around people who don't know who they are, you'll kind of lose your identity into who they think you are, who you feel like you can be, and sometimes those lines will get blurred. And so I kind of stepped away from that, and I was lost, and I was trying to find and define myself by maybe how I served others or who other people said that I was. And it wasn't until about 28 I just was like, wait, I actually don't like this. I don't like this work. I don't like these people. Let me not say I don't like these people, but like I just don't want to live like this. So I started to ask those inner questions. Who are you at your core? And then it's funny that he mentioned he created like another person because from and this is something I've unpacked with my therapist, but like my government is Brianna, right? But I've created this person, Bree, and I don't even spell it the same way. And so it's like, well, I'm just gonna create who I want to become, but 30 plus now, it's like, wait, that little girl that you tried to like bury or run away from, like she's still a part of who you are. So you can't like create a new identity because you're gonna always feel lost until you connect with who you were. How did you dream when you were younger? What are the things that excited you before the world told you what you could be or couldn't be, or before relationships broke your spirit, like our life. Because the thing about it is, you were saying like how like you get knocked down, you get back up, girl. That's life. Yeah. Because I'm like, God, how strong you want me to be? How much I got to go through before I arrive? But I'm learning like you're never gonna arrive. You just have to be in the journey. Yeah. The journey will take you places. You're never when you arrive, you're gonna be gone. You're gonna leave this earth. Amen. So I think it's that acceptance. It's like that's how. I forgot the question of like how. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, for sure.
I answered it the right way.
To what extent is who you are today a result of your own intentional design?
Oh yeah. So it's just like seeking that inner child within, those things that get me excited, regardless of if I got a million supporters or my auntie. You know what I'm saying? Like just who are you at your core? So I think that once I realized that was all that mattered, is that little girl in me was like, wow, this is what I always wanted to be. This is what I wanted to pursue. That's it. That was the answer for me. Like
healing your inner child is like next level work. And that's something I've just started to come to terms with a few years back when I learned that I wasn't fully at peace with the little girl I grew up to be, the little girl who didn't have a voice, who was afraid to be herself, and how that was showing up in my adulthood. And similar to you, like the past 2 years, I'm finally starting to come into myself. It was really transformative for me because I decided to move from New York to Dallas. I don't know what it was about Dallas. I just felt like Dallas was calling my name. I work remotely, so it was an easy move, but I felt like I needed to be here. And I finally feel like this is the place where I'm supposed to be the person that I'm supposed to be in this world. Because like for so long, I did not like myself. I didn't like how I showed up in the world. I didn't like how I wasn't really being true to myself, and I knew that. You know how people see you one way, but you see yourself a different way, and I couldn't really see who other people were seeing. So now this part of my journey is about finding hobbies, finding out what I like, finding out what I don't like, and being unapologetic about it. I would always just find myself in awe when I would see people who would show up with themselves like tattoos or really cool outfits and be like, wow, I wish I could do that. Because for so long for me in my journey, I was chasing happiness, and you can't get too far when you do that. So like you go to college, you get the good job, you get a promotion, you get more salary or whatever, but I still felt like I wasn't happy up until this point. I'm like, wow, I have to really create the life that I want to live. I love the alter ego idea. I'm gonna do
I was about to say.
But what I do now is I'm always saying, okay, what will future Carissa do? Like even coming here, future me is going to be okay speaking in public and being vulnerable, which has always been hard for me to do. And be unapologetic about it. And if I sound crazy, I sound crazy. So I think just like being that person, and I would agree too with what your point about a percentage. I would say about 60-40. I'm being intentional every step of the way, and it's about making those hard choices. Even when you want to go back to who you were, you have to remember you have to keep moving forward to being that person you want to be.
Yeah. All right. So the second part of that was what motivates you to be the person you are. And so I feel like everyone's kind of just said like generally like change, or like just trying to see you envision this person, and that's like it. What are you thinking, Chris?
Yeah. I would say the little girl version of myself encourages me.
That's
like
awesome.
who I was as a little girl. Like if I could be the girl that I knew that she needed when she was younger, like I can only imagine how far I would have been. I didn't have an older sister. I didn't really have that woman in my life. I would feel like who really showed me how to be vulnerable, how to be okay with being myself. Of course, you have affirmations from your family, but you think that they don't know anything.
Right.
So to kind of have like that big sister role, I wish I could have done that. You know, it's hard with your parents.
Yeah.
But I would say that she really inspires me because I did so much out of fear. I was such a scared little girl, so very insecure. But people said otherwise. I mean, I faked it.
Right.
But at my core, I just wasn't really showing up authentically. So I think just knowing who I would want myself to be is really pushing myself into coming into my own.
I love it.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. So I was a similar little girl. I grew up in a home in which I think I told you my parents described me as like almost rambunctious, like you laugh too loud, you're like always smiling. But I was also a very shy child, and I think part of that, I think I have a quiet spirit, but in being criticized for like laughing a lot or being talkative or being like playful as a child, it kind of led me to where I grew up shy, but also like withdrawn, disconnected, scared. And I think now realizing, like you said, life goes on. So I was kind of like, are you going to keep doing your life like this?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you going to figure it out and kind of return back to yourself? Get your little girl, grow her up so you can keep going. And I think also, because my parents are Nigerian, so I'm a child of immigrants, I think when you're doing life in like a different country, you know, there's like legacy. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have kids here. I'm going to be someone's mom. I want to be better for the next generation that's coming up. I don't want them to suffer some of the same things I've suffered. So I think that's a lot of the motivation. Is just it's more than just me. So kind of remembering that as well.
Okay. I would say my motivation is the freedom that I feel. I feel so free because I took a chance on myself. I took a leap of faith and moved to Dallas. No job. I had like $700. I slept on somebody's floor for 12 weeks, but I knew that I had to get out of the box of other people defining the way my life could be, what I could be. I'm like, no, there's more for me. Mm-hmm. And I bet on myself, and I'm gonna keep betting on myself, you know, like, so I think that's that motivation. Like, I'll never go back to that bondage again. So.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Try to take a leap of faith.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna move to the next question. All right. So, what aspects of yourself bring you satisfaction?
It's hard because like in today's society, you're doing well if your job is together, your money's together, you look great, like, and so I think this is such a good question because that's not really you.
Right.
So I think instantly I was like, okay, well, school is going great, like I have a job, and I'm having to like stop myself. Like, what are you defining your satisfaction or success in? Like, what is that? So I think, like, I don't think I could really answer that right now because I'm like, I think I'm still even working that out. Like, it's so hard. It's so hard.
You just need to think about it. Like, who are we outside of capitalism? Like, who are we? For so long, like, I was in school and I just thought, wow, I just needed to graduate college, get a good job, climb the corporate ladder, and that was my identity for the longest. And I thought my next promotion was going to bring me satisfaction in life, and I can check off that mark. But then you hit that goal and you're like, who am I? So I think for me, it's just like showing up and being happy with myself in the skin that I'm in, wanting to progress into a better version, but also loving myself who I am today. And just sitting and showing up, knowing that every day is a new opportunity to be a better version of myself. And that may change. So just doing more of the internal work as opposed to looking for like that external validation as a form of satisfaction and that praise, which you may not always get. So really just kind of like quieting the noise and kind of saying, okay, Chris, you're doing a good job. Like I have told myself I'm proud of myself more times this year than I've ever done that in the past.
Right.
For little things like going to the gym in the morning or, you know, doing something that I thought was hard, but I did it anyway. Like I'm proud of you. So that brings me joy and satisfaction.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I may or may not be answering this question correctly, but so when I'm thinking about like what areas or what aspects of my life or me bring me satisfaction, first of all, I don't think I've actually been very satisfied with my life or myself up until maybe a year ago. Well, actually, a couple months ago, actually. And as I've been kind of trying to discover myself, this may sound very basic, but I actually don't think it's that basic. I think it's quite complex. A thing that I've discovered about myself that I think is pretty cool is, one, I am very creative, extremely creative. I have an eye for things, and I see things in a very different way. From where I live, which I will explain. So I live in a warehouse, like it's a redefine, whatever, you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But it's a warehouse, and I'm finally stepping out of that space. But I was so bothered by leaving it because it has become tied to how this like version of myself, like the very creative version of myself. And so like I've been doing some digging and trying to figure out why it is that I loved it so much. And I figured out that I have a thing for the abandoned or the disregarded things, and like finding a beauty in them. And so I've always said, those who know me very well know I love abandoned buildings, and I love there's just a secret beauty to them. And so I think that's honestly what even attracted me to the warehouse style. Like, it's just like, this thing looks ugly and disgusting and whatever, but like, what could this be? Like, what could this turn into? And so that has been a fun thing to play with, but it's also like kind of gravitated even to people. So like I've noticed that I have a tendency to kind of roam towards people that are a little bit marginalized or like just kind of disregard. And it's like, you're interesting. What's your name? Like, and you find that they're just this beautiful space. Like, so that thing has actually been something I've like really actually identified. Like, that's probably one thing I can say that really stands out is like, I do have an eye for the things that don't get much recognition or don't appear to be beautiful at first. And then it's like a special treat for me when it's like, oh, I discovered this thing that is so amazing. And so it's given me an eye to just kind of now I see things in a very different way. So the things that people kind of pass by or disregard or look, I'm constantly looking at them. That's how I found this place.
That's awesome.
It's just like, what is this? And it's the most beautiful bookstore ever, And so, that's an aspect of myself I really do like, and I'm going to try and really nurture, because that is how you just never know what's behind something. And so like, that's just the thing for me.
One thing that really brings me satisfaction about myself is how little I need beyond myself. Just to be cool, to be happy, to be fine. I feel like I'm pretty, self-sufficient and like self-sustaining in that way. And I feel like I'm really able to break down beyond, like a lot of people were talking about, defining themselves through work or occupation and things like that. That's kind of always been the opposite of what I've done. And I've had to kind of grapple with that too, because today in our society, it's like, well, like you said, well, what are you beyond that? I feel like I've had that sense of myself, and I really do like that about myself. I can be fine sitting by myself for days. I can be fine going somewhere by myself, and I think that that's something for me to be proud of about myself. I really appreciate that about me, that I can be me, just
I'm aligned with that answer, because I mean, I can spend days in my apartment and it not be a problem at all. My girlfriend will say I don't eat enough, but I think I'm fine. I'm also aligned with that aspect of kind of, I haven't really identified myself with my work. I think I've always kind of just seen myself in this like bubble. And it's like I've kind of just been moving through different situations, and I guess it's a form of
it's been a form of like detachment for me. But it's allowed me to kind of go through things and come out on the other side being kind of fine and saying, oh, that wasn't even that bad, even though when I was going through it might have seemed like hell. But I think the thing that makes me most satisfied about myself is that I'm able to just I'm really happy with who I am. And that wasn't something that was always easy for me. And I don't think it's easy for anyone, especially in this day and age, with all of these different things telling you to be a certain way. I think that, I'm kind of proud that I've kind of said no to a lot of that and said, let me figure out who I'm going to be for myself. And spending time by myself has been the most rewarding thing because I've been able to realize that I'm a pretty creative person as well. And so that's been the thing I've tried to tap into more. So I guess that really, at the root of it, I think it's that I'm most satisfied that I'm able to be by myself and in that kind of, I guess, expose this like fire that's always kind of wanted to, come out. So not to hurt anyone, but just shine a light.
Yeah.
So
Fire references keep coming up. Like light, fire,
Yeah.
sparks.
Mhm.
I'm starting to notice that that's kind of a motif that's happening with this conversation. And I wonder if that really speaks to when you're talking about even the term at your core.
Yes.
Like, who are you at your center? I just thought that was really cool.
yeah.
There's like with light fire, all these energies and forms, like it really is an act of resistance to be yourself in this society that tells you to be everyone else but you. That we really don't celebrate uniqueness, or we want to conform, and that's kind of like what we're taught at such a young age. You don't want to be that kid with those weird sneakers. You want to be the cool kid on the block. So I feel like as you get older, you learn that like it's actually the coolest thing ever to be comfortable in your solitude, be comfortable in your own space, and be so unapologetic about it that you don't realize you're actually inspiring other people to do the same. Because I really credit the people in my life who have consistently been themselves, and I'm like, wow, I really admire that. It inspires me to want to do the same and show up for me in that way.
All right. I'm going to move on to our next question. All right. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be? How might this influence your self-identity?
Other than that one, I was kind of thinking about that a little bit in the last question. Signing up for this and, choosing to really sit and talk about myself and think about myself, not by myself, but actually verbalize it out loud, especially in front of people, is something that I'm working towards just because it makes me so uncomfortable. Speaking out is something that I don't normally do, and I would say that not always responding is something that I don't necessarily love about myself, because it doesn't show people who I am, and they don't ever really get a chance to see me or know me. And I like to pride myself, like somebody else said, on finding people and seeing people. So for them to feel seen by me, I have to also expose myself. So that's something that within like the past year or so, I've really sat with, learning to like make myself love the things that my body tells me to hate about myself. So when I start feeling those like anxious, uncomfortable thoughts, when I'm in a space and I'm like, man, this is something that I'm like itching in myself. I know this is one of my habits. I really don't like this. And I can get into that brain spiral instead of sitting in that space. Like I still let myself feel it because at the time there's something that can be done. But I'm really learning to just be easy on myself, be nicer to myself, be more forgiving. And when I'm in those times of thinking, man, I really don't like this about me, just be nicer to me.
I'd say one thing I wish I could. I was to say one thing I wish I could change about myself is my anxiety. I am like a worry. Like, bro, before y'all even came here, the way I was pacing, everywhere. But this is like my normal. That's like my brain stays in that space. And I feel like, man, if I could have just conquered if I conquered my anxiety 10 years ago, not like it's something to be conquered, but what would I be like if I were a more confident version of myself and didn't worry so much? Like, there's certain like things that I turned down, certain people I didn't want to, go around because I was scared that they would think of this of me. Like, there were so many things that I held myself back from just because of my anxiety and my worry or just like experiences. Just when I think about it, it's like, how people say live in the moment. I don't do that. I don't. I'm so busy worrying or thinking that I have like, when it's all over and done, it's like, wow, I didn't even actually experience like whatever. I used to perform, I used to sing, and I was so like focused on like the anxiety of just getting through it. I never enjoyed it. And it's like, people enjoyed it. They enjoyed me, but I didn't enjoy my own experience. And so like, that's something I wish I could really like get rid of or like change, because that, especially as I'm going into this stage of my life, I really do feel like there's a whole bunch of abundance, a whole bunch of beauty that's coming in, and I just really want to enjoy it. Like, even this, like just sitting and just having a conversation with people, and just like, it's just conversation, like relax, like it's not that deep, and just like being able to take everything in. Like, I want to be able to enjoy my life, and anxiety has been what I feel like has been keeping me from doing that fully. So
anxiety is crippling.
It is.
I felt that. For me to add to that, I would say I'm a people pleaser, and that is something that I want to change. I'm always so used to wanting to make everyone else feel comfortable with myself. Mm-hmm. I'm always putting other people before myself. I'm sometimes afraid to really just speak my truth in fear of what other people may say or do if I may rub someone the wrong way, and that has held me back in so many ways. And I want to just be okay with, setting those boundaries with people who, if they really care about you, they're going to still be in your life, and not be so afraid of people leaving, which I think is kind of tied to that. But I want to just work on that those people pleasing. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. You're not a bad person. You're not the bad guy. It's just another way to communicate and build relationships intentionally. I think that's something that I'm personally working on in this journey of mine.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. I would say I am very perfectionistic and very critical of myself. And I think in some ways, like tying to identity, I think that is good because you need self-awareness to keep on getting better. And so I think like keeping with the light is like perfect, but like its forms can be different. So I think for me, understanding that I'm okay as I am, I'm perfect this way, even with my bad and my scars and everything that I've been through. So for me, I am working on that, like perfectionism, because I want to be the best in whatever I'm doing and put my best efforts. I think in some ways it is beneficial, but I think in a lot of ways it's very crippling because I don't do certain things because I might feel like it's not going to be perfect. So what's the point? Or I'm so afraid of like messing up, or like it's been to the point where like I can like throw something away because like one thing is wrong, and it's like that's wasteful. And what was so wrong about it? And it's even caused like just like issues in like relationships with my friends and stuff like that. Perfectionism, I think, can be so damaging. So understanding that you're okay and you're good enough and you're fine and perfect as you are. So I think I'm really working on that. I think so.
I guess something that it made me think what you were saying at the last question. So I not worried but anxious about things that I can't even control, right? Mm-hmm. So the Bible tells us to be content in whatever season that we're in, and that is something that I'm still actively working through, because like I've had like this version of myself. I used to dream about this when I was a kid, but I didn't think it was attainable to me. And then when something switched, and I'm like, oh, you can do that. And so it's like, okay, God, when's it gonna happen? And so it's like I'll make some steps or I'll do a thing, and it's like, okay, well, what's next? And God's like, okay, we'll go over here, we'll serve here, we'll work here. And I'm like, but I don't want to do this. I want to do that, And I think like even me taking a leap of faith, like when I started my podcast in like 22, and it was like audio only, and then I was like, okay, well, I've done that. I'm looking for something else. And God's like, no, you like this is unfinished, you know. And so I took a break from that because I wasn't content, or it didn't give me. It's like, oh, okay, well, I kind of scratched that off. Like, let's do something else. And God's like, girl, you got unfinished business to do. And so I relaunched it at the end of last year, and it's been going good. But like the job that I have, I'm grateful for it. And this is something that I kind of wanted to tell y'all too. Like, it's something that I'm learning. Like, talking about arriving, like you're never gonna arrive. Like every place that you end up, the people that you meet, the things that you do, it might feel or seem insignificant, but it's teaching you something for the next. Because every job that I've had, every relationship that I've encountered, it's taught me something. It's opened up it gave me a key to open up the next door to get to the next journey. And I think that I'm still working on like not being so thirsty about the future that I can't even control, you know? Like, so really releasing control is something that like I'm actively trying to like change about myself and just being. It's kind of a play. That's literally what my podcast is about. It's called Let It Be the Podcast. And it's literally just about releasing control and just being where you are. And so I struggle with that, but can't control it. You just gotta take a step.
Well, you'll just trigger two things that I'm remembering. That is the control aspect, because that's actually been a major theme in like just my life and my relationship with God. And it's like, if you like, keep holding on to whatever it is that you want to do.
Exactly.
If you like, continue. And it's like that's the only reason I'm able to finally step into the person I am wanting to be today, was finally letting go of ropes. Like my hands have been burnt up, holding on to things, trying to control this, that, and the other. And it's just like, I'm stressing myself. I'm sitting here like, God, why are you not like, make it work? And he's looking at me like, bro, you're like, I told you to let go. Relax.
You're doing too much.
Let it go. And it wasn't until literally like several months ago that I just said, and let go. And I just sat there and I was like, I actually like, it's kind of like you close your eyes and you're like bracing for the worst. And then it's like, wait, okay, I'm okay. And he's like, yeah, you're good. Like, and in fact, it made my life felt a lot calmer. And it's like learning to trust.
Yes.
It's another form of releasing that control is learning to trust. I know not everybody is religious, not everybody, whatever, but me learning to let go of that control was me saying yes to God and trusting in that process and just, okay. And since then, my life has just been taking, with the people I've met, with the connections I've had, like within for me, it's telling. It's like you have been holding yourself back by just not being willing to let go and let God or let the situation be. And so I speak to that and the perfectionism, because just that tweak, that mind control, it's just another form of control.
I was actually going to say, like, and this is like therapist hat again, but like things like anxiety, perfectionism, they're all like, so humans, we need to feel loved and we need to feel safe. So when you have like a violation of safety, usually in childhood, it will develop into anxiety, perfectionism, because you're trying to make yourself safe. So it's like that, like reparenting, healing that up is what's like going to set you free from that, literally. So, anxiety, I think a lot of times we assume it's a bad thing. Your body needs to feel anxious because you need to know, I need to run away from this car that's coming. Somebody's trying to attack me. I need to go. But I think like it's getting stuck in it that's like bad. And of course, I think like we all need to just extend grace to ourselves, because it's so hard to get out of it, and we're a work in progress every day.
Yeah. I thought for me, perfectionism was the one thing I wanted to change about myself, only because it kept me from taking action. And at first, when I kind of tried to combat it, I tried to like stuff it down or like avoid it or just kind of get away from it. But I realized that perfectionism was always trying to teach me something, and it was trying to teach me to value the things that I do, right, and to value the way that I kind of show myself to the world, but not hold on to that so much, because it's not really for me. It's for other people, the way I am in the world is not. It's cool for me, but I think that ultimately it's meant to help everyone accept yourself, right? Because I think that obviously you'll benefit from it in the kind of the immediate aftermath of that, of taking action. But it's so that all of the relationships that you're in improve, right? They can't improve unless like you kind of take that step. But I think that with perfectionism, how I kind of started to look at it instead was how could I integrate it into whatever I'm doing, or at least see the good in it, right? And that allowed me to say, okay, I'm going to take action, but the actions I take have to be good. You can't just take like whatever kind of action. And it's not like whatever action. It's just like you have to be intentional with it. And so that's what I wanted to change about myself. But you know, it really told me it's not really you're changing anything. It's just that you're kind of reframing it. And so yeah, perfectionism and kind of relinquishing control of the future has been the thing for me. And I've slowly turned into this person that's like I'm kind of just like moving forward because I'm so sure in the path that I'm following. And so that has kind of helped me combat anxiety or the trying to kind of control the future for myself. Because I can't control it, you know. At the end of the day, tomorrow's gonna happen regardless of whether I like it or not. So I might as well, start stepping type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, good. All right, I'm gonna move to this next question. All right. Did a specific person or experience shape your self-image? What did that communicate to you about who you are?
So many things, right? I think so. Just giving you all like background. So I'm Nigerian American. So my parents are Nigerian, grew up here, but I grew up I used to go back to Nigeria often. And I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, went to private school. So it was the only black girl in my graduating class, just like you guys can imagine. So I think for me, there's been so many like mini traumas that have affected how I see myself. So not even my identity, but my perception of self. And when I went to college, I moved to Atlanta. I was like, oh my God, there's so many Nigerians here. Oh my God, it's going to be fun. I'm not out. And it was just a disaster. Even there, I didn't feel like I had the connection. Moved here to do my master's. And I feel like, okay, maybe I'm like kind of getting it. So I think, and even with that, I've just had so many things like abuse, assault, different things that have happened to where I think it's affected the way I see myself. And so I'm healing that up. But I can say, our parents try their best, right? They're not perfect. I think in childhood, I won't say how my parents behaved. I'll say the messages I took in. Because I don't think they intentionally tried to do these things. But the way my experience of them wasn't, I think, what I needed. So I think realizing that there's just so many mini traumas that happen that kind of either push you this way, push you that way, and it's kind of circling back and confronting that to kind of, change this perception of self that I have that's inaccurate. So I don't want to say it's affected my identity. I think my perception has just been skewed based on just so many things. So, yeah.
I know for me, I grew up in a very small suburban community in Delaware. It was really hard just being comfortable in the skin that I was in when I saw so few people who looked like me, whether the media, my classroom, leadership roles growing up, teachers, etc. I found it really hard just to be myself and show up as a little young black girl and love her curls and love the skin that she was in. And I would say, I don't fault them, but family members kind of also shape a person's identity. It wasn't their intention. They're all just a reflection of their own upbringing, so I have a lot of grace for them now. But just with how I even just refer to myself, my body image was a big one. My family, my dad's family's Panamanian, they're immigrants, and they view weight very differently. They'll laugh at you and call you fat like it's nothing. So hearing that as a young girl, 10 years old, being told, oh, I hear you like to eat a lot. or making little comments about what you decide to, how you decide to dress, that all carried on into adulthood and shaped the young woman that I became, to where I'm like, wow, I have to learn so much about what it means to be beautiful, what it means to be a healthy size, what it means to just be you, because of what I was told based off of other people's perceptions and the brainwashing that they went through in the world. So I've learned to not take things personally, because I also had to give them grace and understand that they were coming from a good place, but also it doesn't negate the hurt and the damage that it caused you, the trauma that is with you that you're still unlearning. So yeah, just that little girl, a suburban Black girl, I'm sure, Alabama, you can relate.
Oh, a mess.
I was in little Clayton, Delaware, and people still being called the N-word, and me wanting to get a perm. So many layers, to your point. So many layers that go into that. Now I'm at a place where I'm unlearning, I'm accepting, I'm coming to peace, and I'm moving on.
I was about to say, I'm thinking about this question, and even kind of going back into the other question that we had, because it's like, why do you have so much, like, where did this anxiety, like, come from? And then I linked it to, probably, it's not the most traumatic event in my life, but it is probably I don't know if you guys have had moments in your life where you're, like, you can identify where your life literally pivots and it changes. And I've had 3. And so the first one for me was the most upsetting, just for, like, in terms of identity. And so this happened when I graduated high school. And there's only a couple people that know this story. I'm not scared to tell this story now, because I'm very educated, and life and God has been good. So life. So when I graduated high school, I was a good student. I did well in school, was a part of all the stuff, did all the things. And I got into my dream college. And so I got in, and then I don't know, I guess, like, just the freedom of being able to, like, not have someone to tell you to come home at 10 o'clock, like, was just, my brain just went ding. And long story short, I ended up actually being put on academic probation and flunking out of school. And so my parents, this is one semester, just like one semester in school. And I'm also Nigerian. And so, as you can imagine, that was a huge, like, upset. And I'm also the oldest of 6. So that was my first black sheep moment. I came home, and I had to deal with the disappointment. I'll be nice about it. My parents were very, very disappointed. My siblings were, I don't know what they had to think about it, but it's just like watching somebody fail, and fail so openly. And, God bless our parents, they know what, they only can do what they can do.
Right.
But that, they didn't really handle it very well. And so, that was where shame took its place in my life. So for 2.5 years, I hid. Like, so I didn't, I was scared to be seen by anybody, because I had identified with this part. I was told, you are, you're not good at anything. You're, worthless. You're not, what are you, like, good for? And, after some time, you just kind of sink into that place. And so a lot of my self-esteem issues were rooted in that place. A lot of anxiety was rooted in that place, because I was always watching my back. I didn't want anyone to see me, because I was so scared of causing or bringing more shame. And I don't know I can't really remember who I was before that moment, but I knew I was happy. I knew I was like a happy-go-lucky person or a kid. After that moment, after that time period in my life, that is where I started to distrust people. I didn't trust myself at all. I lost complete trust in myself. I was like, well, if you couldn't do the one thing, like, it's just one thing, like, what are you good for? And so I learned that I couldn't trust myself. I learned that I don't know, like, I wasn't good at anything. And for some reason in that space, I just
I really walked around like feeling like I just was not it. And it wasn't until maybe like 4 or 5 years later that I actually finally worked through that. But all that to be said, my identity then was rooted in my grades and how I performed. So performance, that was a very big thing for me to overcome, as well as opinions of other people. So that was a lot of my identity was rooted in other people's words and how I performed in general. If someone told me I did well, I did well. If someone told me I was pretty or smart, I was pretty or smart. And if I couldn't tell myself, there was no way, like, it's like, I need you to tell me these things, or I can't believe, I don't believe it. I don't. And it wasn't until like I had to really build myself up from that point. Like got back in school, did all the things. Even then, like I would still kind of I felt like that little kid. It's like, mommy, daddy, see, I got an A in my class. And it's just like, whatever, like, this is what you look at, then that wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. So even then, I had to learn then, like, no, you have to tell yourself you did good. You did good. You got yourself out. You pushed. And it has been a series of those moments and where I've learned to turn off everybody else and the opinions of my parents, the opinions of my siblings, the opinions of other people who would eventually catch me like sneaking around or like, and it was just like, I just didn't want to be confronted with, why aren't you in school? Like, what are you doing here? And have to answer to like somebody, like answer to a random like 20-year-old as to why my life is the way it is. And I felt like at that time, like I felt like I had to answer to people. And so, that was a time. Like I had to really unlearn a lot of things. And that a lot of the trauma, a lot of the anxiety is rooted in that space because I was so scared, and I was just scared of being embarrassed and scared of being, just ripped to shreds again. And like, it made me not trust myself, trust situations. But God is good. Life is great. We've moved. And that is actually the important thing about that whole entire thing was I am not that person anymore. And I've had to unlearn that is not who you are. You are not that trauma, that place, but it is one of the most important, things that has happened to me because it has been what has put me in this trajectory of like finding who I am. My strength is rooted in that girl because she had to teach herself that she was good. You were good enough. You did it. You're smart. You are all the things you are capable of. So that lesson is what has carried me to this day. And when somebody tells me or a job or whoever says you're not good enough or I don't pick you, I don't whatever. Nope. I picked myself. I did a good job. I fought to get here. I'm here. You know what I mean? And so that's my little spiel on that. Ooh, sorry, it was a lot.
Wow. I hear that. And that's such a problem, I think, across all communities, but specifically like West African or yes, because you're not the first that I've heard like similar stories. And again, our parents, they don't know. So I think I've been on this forgiveness journey, forgiving them so I could forgive myself and just be able to, because they really don't know. And I think like just in my own work, but also with my clients, it's that constant reminder that they don't know and they probably never going to get it. So I think it's also dealing with that pain there too, because you want them to kind of get it. And unfortunately, you have to pick yourself up and kind of keep going. So yay, kudos to you.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that and kind of giving license to say that you're working on it, because if I'm completely honest, I'm still in a place of frustration. I don't feel like it was fair. I'm still working through that. I don't feel like it was right. I don't feel like I was given, like you said, given what I needed. And I'm still in a space of realizing that, like you said, they did the best that they could with what they had, but also knowing that if I'm working on it, I need you to work on it too. Let's talk about that. Because it's not okay, it's not fair for you to still propagate and still put me in these situations, and I'm the only one trying to work through it. Because specifically, like in the Black community, family means everything. You're talking about word of mouth, family, personal relationships is everything. So I can't just say I'll never talk to them again.
Right.
Like that's not realistic for me.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to be in a space where I'm not re-traumatizing myself every time you're not in a good mood. Like I don't want to be in that space. And I'm still working through how I can learn to accept what I can't change.
Yeah.
So
I really appreciate you saying that because I have mommy wounds. I have both parent wounds, but I have mommy wounds. And I'm the therapist that also goes to therapy, and I be in there crying my behind off and trying to sort my stuff out. And I think what I've learned in my own therapy and working with my clients is that number one, we have this fantasy of what our childhood was supposed to be and like what our parents were supposed to be, and really like letting that go and like crying for that child who didn't get what she or he or they needed. I think for me, it's been letting go of that fantasy. I've literally like written characteristics of this is my dad, this is my mom. What can you expect from them based on these characteristics of who you know them to be? If the expectations don't match, you need to let that go. Because if they're 60, 50, 70, they're not going to, right? So I've learned that we have to change how we are as it relates to them. So it's so much like boundaries, disengaging. You know, I feel I experience you as this. If you continue to do this, then, and again, we can't really, in our culture at least, we're not about to cut them off, but it's really like changing how we are as it relates to them and like being so protective of that. And the forgiveness journey and getting there is so hard. I'm right there with you because it's hard. And it's something I think again, when you have mommy wounds, it's just so hard. I was to the point where like I don't even want a daughter. If I'm gonna make her go through all this, I'd rather just not even do it. And so I think like I hear that, and we're not that genetically or psychologically different from our parents either. So in our identity, like we're so much of them, and I think like that's another thing that's hard to accept because you don't. I think we're on the journey of not becoming them or not letting what they did to us like define who we are, but at the same time confronting that from a place of grace and compassion, forgiveness, so that we can, you know, get to where we want to be. It's so hard. So I hear that.
Something that my therapist said to me one day. She gathers me all the time, but I kind of felt like I could relate to you. It's like, well, if I'm doing the work, why come you can't do the work? The same resources are available to you. Just like I sought out and to find to do something different. And she checked me. She just said, like, the mindset that you have, the access that you have, they didn't grow up with that. They didn't know that they could go and be free. They didn't know that they could maybe go and pursue their dreams. They were taught survival. You know, like, and if you think back, like, generationally, some of the things that they've been through, you didn't have time to dream. You got to take care of these kids. You got to make, and then if you go further back to slavery, like, it really does have an impact on life. So we're products of that. Like, they did the best that they could. And, like, once I accepted that, and it's going to come with time, it's going to come with forgiveness and acceptance. But once I was able to fully, like, accept that, it was easier for me to have a relationship with my mom. And so this is very personal. And I'm in my head, like, do I share this or not? I haven't even shared this on my platform. But, like, the question that you asked is so loaded. It's like, what's one thing that happened to you? So for me, I deal with, like, childhood abandonment. And when you are abandoned as a child, and it followed by a lot of trauma. Some of them I haven't even shared with my parents or anything. But going through that trauma, like I didn't have the best relationship with my parents. Like I was abandoned as a child, and then I was treated like an outcast, and I felt like I wasn't enough. So I grew up, and to this day, 31 years old, I still struggle with like believing that I'm enough for wherever I am, whatever table God has placed me at. Like I still struggle with that, and so I grew up feeling invisible. Sometimes I would write the word invisible on me because that's how I felt. I was told that my feelings didn't matter, and so I grew up believing that, and it's caused rift in relationships. It's very easy, and I don't really like this about myself, but it's so easy for me to detach because when you're used to that, and you said something about like being traumatic or like that anxiety, you want to protect yourself, and so it's like the way that I learned how to cope and protect myself, like, baby, ain't no chains. Anybody can go. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna be okay, and I live my life like that. And it's like, damn, like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm 31, like, and I don't have kids, and I don't necessarily know that I want kids, but it's just like I like being by myself. I feel the safest when I'm alone. I can control it. Like, even me moving away, like, I love my family, very close to my family, my mom, my dad, everybody, but like, I control when I go home. I control when I leave. I control who in my space. It's that sense of control, but it is rooted into that childhood, that trauma, like making sure, like, because like Little Bree wasn't protected. Little Bree went through a lot of things that people didn't know, you know what I'm saying? But like now nobody's gonna try me, you know what I'm saying? Like I got me, and so living that it's made me come off. I'm like a jelly bean. People who don't know me might think like, if she like super hard or she tough, but like I'm a crybaby, you know what I'm saying? But you ain't gonna know that. I'm never gonna show like my hand, you know? So it's just kind of one of those things where like accepting like you like my parent did the best that they could. They did what they thought was right. You know what I'm saying? And like though it caused a ripple effect into my life and others, it's just like, okay, well now that you have the resources, you go get the help. Like I don't know why God chose me to be the generational curse breaker, but like maybe He must think that I can do it. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like when you got those resources, utilize them and don't wait for an apology from your parents that you might never get, because that's going to keep you bound. It's going to hinder you from growing into becoming who it is that God has created you to be. And so like that freedom that I talked about earlier, it came with accepting that I might not get what I needed. My parents didn't affirm me at all. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't believe that I was attractive until in my 20s. You know what I'm saying? And this when I had a journey, like I had locks, and that's when I was like, yeah, my ex kind of look good. You know what I'm saying? Like it took me time, but I had to learn to accept myself and not let the traumas and the things that I've been through define how far I can go or how beautiful I could see myself. You know what I'm saying? So it's just kind of one of those things where like life will teach you that, and then like the easier you release control of that and just accept what is and let go of that how it should be, then you'll be able to really have a fruitful relationship with the people that you didn't ask to be in their family. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But like God gave them to you. So like what can you do to better it for the next generations? Right. That's it.
Ooh, period. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thank you all for sharing. I'm going to move on to our next question. All right. Was there a time in your life when you genuinely liked who you were? What contributed to the positive self-perception?
I like who I am now.
I was
about to say whatever was, even last year, whatever was going on before, I think I like who I am now. I think I'm only getting better, and I think it has been thinking for myself. So I remember there was a time I wrote like literally like my beliefs, like, or what I believe to be true. So I was like, yeah, relationships are like unfair, people are judgmental, just like a whole bunch of negative perceptions I had of the world and myself. And I kind of made a list of, well, what do I want to believe instead? So not necessarily the opposite, but just what I want instead. And I think being intentional in that list and working towards that has gotten me to the point where I like who I am now. What was the other part of the question? Yeah. Contributed. Yeah, I think to that self-perception is just again, you have to keep on going. So I think affirming myself, and you're going to have to keep on going. If everybody else leaves you, you have to have you. So I think just like being a friend to myself and just like nurturing myself, pouring into me what I didn't get. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you have to be your biggest fan, your biggest cheerleader. So I like where I'm at now. I feel like it's only getting better, especially just in being able to think for myself and then act accordingly.
I was about to say, I can agree. I think I like this version of me a lot better. Only because, and now I have like a little phrase that I tell myself where it's like, well, tell God. It's like,
Lord, let me live as authentically as I can before I die. Before I leave this earth, may I have done everything in my power to like access every little thing of myself. Because I think that's like the biggest shame. I think with everything, even with my brother passing, that's the thing that has triggered. It's like, may I live my life fully and without limits that I've placed on myself. And so may I live it as authentically as possible. And that is what's triggered just this like spur of do the things. Like do the things. Don't let yourself like this has been something I've been thinking about doing for 3 years now. To sit down and go do it. I talked myself out of it. Who am I? I'm not a podcaster. I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not Tim Ferriss. I'm not none of them. Like, you know, and it's like that I had to shut that up. You are you, you know, and you don't have to be or replicate anybody else. You don't have to, you are you. And so even this, it'll have my own little touch on it. Anything I do, it'll have my own little touch on it. And I want to do, that's how I want to live my life. And so when I finally like wrapped my head and my heart, got my head and my heart in agreement with that, because I think my heart wanted it. My head just wouldn't. It was like, oh, what's the logistics? How are we going to do it? What's the da-da-da-da? And it's like, no, I got my head and my heart in alignment and saying, listen, we're going to live this life as authentically as possible. And that's going to be our motto. I'm not perfect, but I think that is, you mentioned like your superpower at the beginning. That's one of my things. It's just like, I want to be as vulnerable as possible. I feel like that's the thing. Like you can't harm me if I've told you all the things and showed you my hands, like you can't use it against me. And so this is one of my ways of like being like, so what else are you going to use against me? This is my strength now. So I'm not the best speaker, but I'm going to learn how to be. This is a way to try to be and trying to step into that power every single day. So I am, wow, that's funny. I am in love with the person I am today. That's so crazy. Wow. Oh, I'm not surprised. That's wild. I'm happy with who I am today. And I am praying that it just gets,
Amen.
Gets better. So, yeah.
It definitely will get better because even when you're doing the thing, I was in radio, you know what I'm saying? Like I thought like, I didn't have a voice. I don't know how to do the things, but you do because you're doing it. And the things that like you might listen back to this, it's like, hey, I could do that better. Next time you will. Period. Like brick by brick. And literally I tell myself that every day, brick by brick.
Again, I've been telling myself just to do it scared. Mm-hmm. Just to do it scared. Even if you're terrified, just do it. What you can do is learn from your mistakes, learn from what you could have done differently, and that's okay, not to be so hard on yourself. I know for me, like, I am really happy where I am today. I couldn't always say that in the past. I look through old pictures and I get triggered, just like, even though I was smiling, I wasn't really happy, I wasn't really content with myself, and you know when you really feel good about yourself, and I'm finally at a place where I'm happy with the decisions I'm making, I'm showing up for myself, and, I'm being very intentional. I had a big wake-up call that happened last week. Yeah, last week Wednesday. I lost my cousin unexpectedly. Happened so fast. All really happened fast. I couldn't even fly back home to be there for the viewing because the viewing happened 2 days later. And it was just a lot to process. And like every day this past week, I've been just like, damn, life is short. Damn, life is short. Damn, it's really short. And it's like, I can't afford to keep sleeping on myself, to keep being so mean with negative self-talk and not like betting on myself every day because we don't know how long we have. And I think for me, like just what happened this past week has really kind of pushed things into gear, just with me coming out here or just being brave to speak up in meetings or like calling friends you haven't talked to in a while because you think time has passed, and it's like you don't know what tomorrow holds, and why waste another second not just showing up as you. And for so long, I hated myself. Like, I did not like the person I saw in the mirror. I didn't like who she was. I didn't like the fears that kept her back. So now this is me finally having that chance to do all the things I was too scared to do, and just be myself doing it.
Mm-hmm. I'll move on to our last question, okay? All right. So, is the person you are today in alignment with the person you aspire to be? How do you navigate the journey towards your ideal self?
I think life is ebbs and flows, dips and whatever the saying is. Yeah, ebbs and flows, right? I think where I am now in my journey, yes, I'm aligning towards that person that I want to be. But like you said, once you arrive, you're not going to be here anymore. So like you mentioned before, I think just the journey of doing things authentically, keeping my light shining, I think doing things in integrity. Like you said, like even like a lot of the things we're ashamed about is you're only ashamed because either you haven't confronted it, you're not resolving those issues for yourself, or because you have this perception that like it's bad when it's just a part of like the journey. So just like not being ashamed of like lows, because are they really that low? Like when you step back and reflect, it's not that bad. Or, oh my God, it was horrible, but I learned this, I came out of this, I can teach someone this. It's just like another testimony. So I think I'm just going with the ebbs and flows and just, I think handling things differently based on what I know now. And I think that's like literally what life is as you work to find yourself. It's doing things differently with the knowledge you have now as you grow every day and learn every day. And then I think you can't do life without relating to people. So even like as you're doing that, letting that, making sure that you're having a positive effect, trying to do as little harm as possible to others. I think as you're taking care of you, but also, you know, as your duty as a member of society, making sure that whatever it is, being mindful of how others receive that, so you're able to do as little harm as possible, but making sure you're taking care of you. I think so.
I would say, can you ask the question one more time?
Yes.
All right.
Is the person you are today in alignment with the person you aspire to be? How do you navigate the journey towards your ideal self?
Keep saying yes. Keep showing up. Doing it scared. Being unsure. Not waiting for it to be perfect before you start. Mm-hmm. Just brick by brick. I think that is. So, like, to answer your question, yes. Being around, being mindful of your environment, being mindful of how you treat your gates, what you're listening to, what you're consuming. All those things make a difference, and it can get you off track. So, as long as I'm like intentional about guarding my gates, making sure I have the right people in the right relationships, and just taking a chance on myself, I think that's the way that I'll continue to walk in alignment with like who I was created to be.
My dad always says that your diet isn't just what you eat, but it's what you consume, it's what you listen to, it's who you surround yourself around. And I'm being super intentional about that at this chapter of my life. Like, one thing, I've been taking a social media detox. Mm-hmm. You don't realize how much social media kind of in our generation has really like controlled our way of thinking and how we see the world. And I'm just like experiencing things because I want to, not necessarily because I'm always being influenced every second of the day. And that's really been helpful. And then just taking the time to really just sit in my thoughts and reflect and quiet a lot of the outside noise and doing more things by myself and being comfortable with who I am, because I feel like you can't really be comfortable with who you are until you're really by yourself and sitting through all those different uncomfortable feelings. And I think that's just really helping me in this chapter and showing up as me and doing things hard, going to the gym every morning, and, you know, doing things that I know my future self is going to be really grateful that I'm making these decisions today that I know it's only going to help propel me in the future.
Anybody else?
So to speak to that, what I'm doing to be in alignment with the person that I see myself as, or who I truly am, is really allowing myself to feel and to sit with my feelings. Historically, that has not been acceptable for me to feel, so I kind of push those things away. But for me to continue to become the person that I know I've always been, not become the person that I think I should be, I know I've been that person at my core. I'm a feeling person. I am a thoughtful person. I'm a thinking person. I'm an empathetic person. So for me to be that for other people and to hold that space for other people, I have to hold it for myself. So that's how I continue to stay on that path, is to be open and to feel, whether it's pretty or it's not, whether I think it's acceptable for other people to see or not. For me to be my authentic self, I have to let myself feel.
I love that. I was about to say, I definitely agree with that. I think sometimes I feel too much, so I'm trying to scale it back a little bit, and not take things too personally. I think that's another thing that's stalled me a lot and has kept me more in like another person's headspace than my own. It's just kind of like, oh, well, what am I doing that may affect another person? Or like, I'm always thinking about somebody else and how they feel, and I don't really pay attention to myself. And so, like, I'm right there with you. It's just like, feel, but learn, like, pay attention to how I show up, what's going on with me. Putting myself in spaces to actually get to that space. I think that's the other thing. I when I looked back, I wanted to do certain things, or I wanted to have certain experiences, but I didn't necessarily put myself in the spaces to actually make that something that came true. I stayed around the same people. I did the same things. Even though I had the desire to want to, it's like desiring to want a different outcome, but still keeping yourself in the same space. You know what I mean? And so it's like, but I realized it was because I was scared. Obviously, it's like, well, that complacency, like I had to do away with the complacency. That is my message to anybody. It's like, if you want to move forward, you're going to have to get like comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so that has been something that's like, it's just, it's gross to me, but it's like, I'm having to, that is what, it has been fruitful. Like, it's just been very fruitful. Like, putting myself in a different space or a different environment has opened me up to meet some of the most amazing people that I would have never like talked to or encountered or whatever if I just stayed in my little cocoon. Taking a chance on yourself. I'm sure there are things that we think about doing all the time or should do or want to do. Do it. Try it. Attempt at it. At least say that you've done it before you sit there and count yourself out. So that's something I'm like, I used to tell myself like, oh, like I want to do this, but it's like, but I can't, but no more. It's like now that impulsivity, it's like, I wonder how I would, show up this way. And that's another way I'm discovering myself. So it's like those things that pop up and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I tried that. And you try it and either you're terrible at it or you're like, that's actually a new skill I've unlocked. And like, it's just like those trial and errors with self. And so constantly putting myself in the position to say yes, that has been helpful. Being open, stop, like I had to do away with being like really closed-minded, or like, I wasn't necessarily closed-minded, but just scared, just always scared. It's just like, okay, always being scared. So doing away with the fear. Doing it, what were you saying? Doing it scared. Doing it scared.
That was a good conversation.